Hello everyone. So today I'm going to be doing a slightly different video. I was going to try and live stream this, but for some reason streaming doesn't seem to work for me. And the video's topic today is why financial literacy is so important now more than ever. And if you're not familiar with it, I definitely recommend you pick this book up, Rich Dad Poor Dad by Robert Kiyosaki. A lot of the topics I'm going to be talking about are going to be in this book. He's definitely a really good book for anyone to read. You may also want to pick up Cash Flow, his game for that. I actually have the board game, been playing it since I was a kid. So why is financial literacy more important now than it ever has been? Well, in part because if you look at our economy, you look at finances of people today, it's very clear that people are having a lot harder time to actually paying bills than they ever have. And I'm not talking, of course, about budgeting. No. When I say financial literacy, I don't mean putting a budget together. It's part of it, but it's not the main thing. Financial literacy is, in all truth, in figuring out what is and isn't an asset. And unfortunately, for a good number of us, especially as young folks and older folks, the conventional wisdom is actually not financially literate. For example, buying a house is considered buying an asset. It's not. And the reason why I say buying a house isn't an asset is you have to consider the following. The longer that you own that home, you're paying a mortgage for 30 years. So there's money out of that. You're paying property taxes. You're paying maintenance for that building, which can be anywhere from $5,000 to tens of thousands of dollars during the entire time you own it. And some people might say, but what about equity? Well, here's the problem with equity, okay? Equity is as much as dependent on the market price for a home as anything else. I like to call it Schrodinger's cash or theoretical money because in theory, you could get money from that house. For example, you buy a house for $130,000, right? And you borrow 130 grand from the bank. In theory, hopefully, the longer you own the building and the market will go up, that price of that house will go up with it. However, the problem with market price and theoretical money is there's actually no guarantee that you will actually receive that. You see, a value of something is not actually what someone says it is, but rather what someone is willing to pay for it. So even if an appraiser comes in and says your $130,000 house is now worth 300 grand, unless the appraiser is going to hand you $300,000 in hand, your house is not worth that. Your house is going to be whatever is someone's willing to pay for it. So, but the bank will sure as hell let you borrow an extra $300,000. The bank will, that's one of the things about theoretical money is like banks love to loan against it because it means that much more money you owe them, which means that you have to pay them more in terms of payments and fees and fines. So they love theoretical money a lot. It's actually why part of financial literacy is as well as basically understanding that debt is not something of an asset. It's something that if you build it, it will constantly cost you money. It will constantly drain your finances. For example, if anything, I'm always inundated with credit cards trying to get me to borrow more and more money. I have about $6,000 some dollars in credit card debt myself. Thankfully, I started kicking in and started using my thoughts and knowledge that I've had since I was a kid and started realizing, oh shit, before things got super terrible. But, I mean, the problem, like I said, conventional wisdom tells us a lot of things. And sometimes it's good, sometimes it's bad. Sorry if my ADHD kicks in and we're doing a whole eclecticness here. But the fact is, with the economy the way it is, it's more important now than ever for us to gain financial literacy for people to actually be able to understand what an opportunity is. And a lot of opportunities are not going to be spelled out for you. They're going to be something that kind of you got to connect the dots with through intuition and instinct. But more than that, it's also an understanding, like I said, the difference between an asset and a liability. A car and a house, despite conventional wisdom saying that those are assets, for the most part, in reality, if you actually look at the mathematics of what they do to your bank account, they're very clearly liabilities. A car, again, you're constantly paying the entire time for that vehicle with the money you owe on it. Most cars, by the way, as well, the more mileage you put on it, the less valuable it becomes, unless it's specifically a classic vehicle where there's not a whole hell of a lot of them left, or some limited edition car, which most people don't usually drive very much. And during the whole time you own it, it will cost you even more and more to replace parts that break. So these things that we're told to be conventionally to be assets are by far no means assets. We're also told conventionally that owning a home is the major way of building wealth. But the thing is that's not really financially literate, because owning a home is more about building debt than wealth. Increasing the amount that you can borrow from a credit card is not increasing your wealth. It's increasing the amount of debt that you owe. It's increasing the amount of debt that you owe to the bank. It increases the bank's wealth, but it does not increase your own. And so I know a lot of people might be going, well, okay, Isaac, okay, smart guy, how do I build wealth? Well, first is one's looking for genuine opportunities that you can afford to go for. And you can borrow some debt, but you have to make sure that, for example, if you are borrowing money to buy a building, then it's for the purpose of renting it out. Or if you're planning on flipping like a junker house that you're fixing up, and you manage to sell it for more than what you paid for it. Those things are forms of making wealth. For someone at my level who has like 27 grand a year, my suggestion is to download yourself Robinhood or Webull and start buying small, cheap shares from companies that you know are well established and aren't going anywhere for any time soon. Companies like Mazda, matter of fact, which are about $3, somewhere around there a share. And it allows you to buy large portions of shares, because you have to remember that when you're talking about the stock market and shares, you're paid out per share. So buying, let's say, a share of Microsoft, which is about $200 or $300 a share, is going to be extremely expensive. But if you buy like Ford at $20 a share, you're going to be a lot easier to build your portfolio. And it also helps you build wealth over a short time. It might be a longer game to some extent, but at least it's better than buying a house where you're constantly being cost money the whole time you own it. I don't have to spend money on my shares in a company. I just sit there on my phone and just like, okay, I'll just buy some more. In part, the problem as well that our economy has faced is literally because of the fact that people have based their finances so much on theoretical money that people literally have put themselves more and more in debt. Not only that, but even if they do get paid more, they just borrow more money thinking that they're buying assets instead of realizing that no, what you're buying is more and more debt and more liability. It really does break down, whether people like it or not. Anything that costs you money out of your account is a liability. Anything that brings money in is going to be an asset, one way or another. Even if you use your car for something like Lyft or Uber, you still have a problem, because if Lyft and Uber are starting to pay you for mileage and gas, you're still paying for the maintenance of the car. You're still paying for the gas in the car. If you really want to earn $27,000 driving around being a pseudo taxi cab that you're not even getting really paid to fix your vehicle for, you might as well just work in retail. Just saying. You'll get about the same amount and you won't put that much damage on your car. In the long time, you'll probably earn more monies and spend less, actually. But financial literacy is becoming more and more important, especially as more and more generations are growing up, because we're seeing people who are having a harder and harder time just being able to have a place of their own. Thankfully, I have my own apartment. That's harder and harder these days, especially when you have financially illiterate people who are being landlords who want to charge enormous amounts of money. Someone who's financially literate will charge you about 3 times what their actual cost per unit, or in the case if you're renting the building, you'll charge someone about 3 times the cost of having that building on a monthly basis. Plenty enough room for profit, you get plenty of what you need, and you have no hard time in actually keeping a tenant. For example, if it's costing me $5,000 for a 20-unit building, that comes out about somewhere around $200 a month, right? So on average, I would want to charge about $750 a month per unit. If you have different sized units, for example, you have studio apartments, 1 bedroom and 2 bedrooms, you charge about $500 a unit for the studios, $750 for the 1 bedroom, and $1,000 for your 2 bedrooms. Plenty enough profit, like I said. You still get about $10,000 worth of profit, more than what you normally need any month, more than enough to cover taxes and everything else, because when I'm talking about the $5,000 is literally including taxes and insurance and all that. Your tenants will like you because they won't have as much a hard time paying the rent. You'll like the tenants because here's the thing, as a landlord, if you don't have paying tenants, you're paying for that out of your own pocket. The longer you don't have paying tenants, the longer you're paying out of your own pocket. So having a reasonable price actually sets things up to where you'll have probably long-standing tenants. Not only that, but then even if they move out, you won't have as hard time getting new ones. Which is actually a problem a lot of landlords are starting to run into because they're trying to charge market price. There's that theoretical money again. And the problem with market price is it's kind of a wishful scenario. Market price is literally, in the best perfect storm scenario, this is what you're going to make from it. Like, you just happen to run into somebody who just happens to have that amount of money and is just happening to be willing to pay for that. Most people will not pay market price for something. They will definitely go for the cheaper option if they can. So really, it's actually better to just charge based on your expenses than worry about markets. Because market goes up and down anyway. At least with your expense, you're more protected, especially against things like inflation, where, for example, the market price of everything goes up and suddenly your tenants can't afford to pay you anymore because they can't choose between you and food. So, and no, I'm not saying that spitefully, I'm saying just as a point. So it's really becoming a problem, especially for our economy, which is actually why we're partially in such a bad shape that we are. With so many people not being financially literate, we've actually managed to tank our economy because our economy is built so much on actual debt and liabilities that your average United States citizen owes, on average, somewhere around $50,000 to over $100,000. And it's really starting to hurt, especially with jobs starting to decay, which one of the best things I can definitely tell you from this book that you should definitely take to heart and definitely should pay attention to is there are two places you should never fully rely on for an income. Never rely on the government for an income. Never rely on your job for an income. The government, because the same programs that they're running are almost always out of money, or there's no guarantee that those programs are going to continue depending on who's in charge. As far as your job, I mean, you can be laid off tomorrow. It doesn't matter how irreplaceable you think you are. You can be laid off tomorrow and end up without any kind of work, on unemployment. So it's best to actually start building up real assets that give you real money in your bank account and not base your finances on theoretical money, and start basing your finances on real money, actual money going to your bank account. Schrodinger's cash sounds great, but unfortunately it's only good if you want to borrow money from the bank. But it's becoming more and more important that people understand this if they want to actually survive, especially, like I said, with the economy constantly going down as it is. It's a good idea to actually start becoming more and more financially savvy instead of just blaming wealthy people and saying, oh, they're robbing us. And it's like, dude, do you really think you were born with several $1 billion and some old man snuck into your crib and stole your money? Trust me, that's not how that works. These guys are just smarter. They're actually financially literate. They know, for example, one of the things that they do if they want to buy a fancy car is they won't go get a loan. What they'll do is they'll buy some additional assets. They'll go get another rental property. They'll buy more assets paying dividends into a company, and they'll pick up shares that are paying dividends. And those shares will end up paying for the car. That rental property will end up paying for the car. The property that they fixed up and sold for a profit will pay for the car. And so not only will they have that car completely paid off, mind you, but they'll have a constant stream of income that will allow for them to pay for the maintenance and everything else that goes with it. And that's something that we actually do need to start emphasizing into our young folks and into, I say young folks, I'm only 31, but you get the idea, and into the younger generation and into our generation, and especially us millennials, our older siblings, Gen X, and the Gen Zs that are like the kids that we sit there and get annoyed by. But it's going to be important to kind of stress and say, hey, pick up books like this, learn from them, figure it out, play games like Cash Flow so you can understand how finances actually work. Because otherwise, we're looking at just a complete economic collapse. Like it or not, the government can only do so much. In fact, most of the time, if you're dealing with the government, they usually tend to take a sledgehammer to everything. So it usually ends badly for everyone every time. So, yeah. But that's my 2 cents on that. What do you guys think? Do you think that we should be starting to try and teach people how to be truly financially literate? Or are we just going to try and use the government to ban things we don't like, or to tax the rich who pay most of the taxes anyway? I mean, hell, if you make under $20,000, you don't pay taxes at all. Your taxes money is immediately refunded back to you. So yeah, fun. But thanks for watching, everybody, and I hope you guys stay safe. Take care, and I'll see you next video. Hopefully we'll get back to gaming. It is what it is, and I'll see you guys next time. Thank you.